everyone, my name is Chelsea Rubel. Today is 7/16. I am doing lab number 3, part 1 of microbiology 225, bacterial enumeration, as you can see here on the paper. So, sorry, I keep fogging up and I haven't touched anything. So, I have cleaned off my area with a 10% alcohol solution. I already poured my TSA into my agar plates. I have labeled them correctly. I have also labeled my vials correctly between 10 square root of 1 through square root of 6. I have also filled up the vials with 2.25 ml of distilled water. I pre-mixed my yeast with a quarter of a teaspoon of yeast along with 2 tablespoons of warm tap water. I have my distilled water here with my cleansed pipette, and I also have an additional cup to dispose of the distilled water when I need to clean it up. So to start off, I'm going to take the pipette and I'm going to, well, first I'm going to stir my yeast a little bit so that it can be evenly dispersed. So I'm going to take my pipette, and from the yeast mixture, I am going to identify 10 -1 right here. I'm going to take 0.25 of the yeast mixture, and I'm going to put it into the 10 with the square root of 1. It says to go ahead and do it up and down so you can make sure that it is all in there. So then I'm going to put my yeast to the side. From the 10 -1, I'm going to take, or 10 square root of 1, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and dilute this by taking 2.25 of this, and placing it. These pipettes are not the easiest thing to work with. Syringes are much easier. I'm going to put that 0.25 into 10 -2, and I'm going to then pull it up and put it down, up and down, so I can make sure that all of that is in there correctly. So then again, I'm going to take 0.25 and I'm going to put it into 3 to dilute that, pull it up, put it down. I'm going to take 0.25 and put it into 4, pull it up, put it down, pull up 0.25. Let me just make sure I can see. 0.25, put it in there, pull it up, put it down. So this process is diluting the yeast from the first specimen, which is 10 square root of 1, to then all the way through, diluting it so that I can see. I'm going to pull up 0.25 and put it in my final 6. Pull it up, put it down. Ooh, I need to pick that up. These things don't stand very well within this cylinder. I wish that they had a better holder so then it could be a little bit better. So I'm going to clean out my pipette by pulling out some distilled water from this cup right here, and I'm disposing it into a disposable cup just so that I'm not washing the pipette out with distilled water that is already reused or constituted. So then now that I have my diluted yeast to distilled water, excuse me, like I said, this thing is not the sturdiest. Excuse me. Okay. So, now that I have that taken care of, all of my yeast with my distilled water is going to be diluted properly. Now I'm going to open up, I have each one of my containers properly labeled here, my agar plates. As you can see, I'm gonna be taking off the lid to one. This is gonna be agar plate, which is labeled TSA 10 to the square root of 1. I'm going to be placing from this first vial 10 -1 of the distilled yeast mixture. I'm going to be taking 0.25, no, not 0.25, sorry, 0.12, which is really a very small amount. The 0.12 is going to be just half of actually the 0.25 mixture. It's going to be half of that. So really have to be careful as to what it is that we're pulling out of here, because it's not, again, these pipettes are not really the best or easiest to work with. So I'm going to be putting this diluted amount of yeast and distilled water into my agar plate. I'm going to be rinsing the pipette out. I'm going to be covering this agar plate with the lid, and then the directions say to swirl it around so that it can be evenly placed, and then that one is going to be complete. So then again, I'm going to do the same thing for 10 -2. I'm going to take off the lid. I'm going to take 0.25 out of this dilution. I'm going to put it in there. Rinse my pipette with the distilled water. Cover and swirl around that solution. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these the exact same way, following through from the same vial to the same number that is associated with the vial and the agar plate. So again, 0.25 from 10 to the square root of 3. I mean, not 0.25, sorry, 0.125. I'm going to cover it. I'm going to swish it around. So that it's evenly placed. And then I'm going to be doing that again. So what this is going to do is that it's basically going to show the colonization of each one of these dilutions. So basically, the first one is really not completely diluted. It is in the sense that it was 2.25 of distilled water that was placed with the original yeast. However, when you move through the other tubes, those are going to be more diluted. So the colonies aren't going to be as concentrated. Once I'm done here, I'm going to place these in the area where I will be letting them incubate. I'm going to be, I'm going to be letting them incubate for 12 hours on this one side. And then for the remaining 6 hours, 36 hours, I will be flipping them over lid side down so that they can continue that incubation process for that full rest of the 36 hours to accumulate for the 48 hours that they are needed for incubation. So I'm just making sure that I'm also cleansing my pipette every single time, so there's no additional yeast bacteria that's going to be growing on my diluted colonies, and so that hopefully everything comes out correctly. So now that I'm finished, I'm going to go ahead and take my agar plates to the incubation area. I will be disposing of all this and cleaning up and putting away everything that I need to be reused, and I will report back in 48 hours. Thank you so much.